Last week we talked about classes, and there were three key pieces of classes. There were fields, the information that our class, our variable, keeps track of. And then there was a constructor which creates the object. It creates a brand new soccer game. And then we had methods, and we talked about get methods to get the information out and set methods to change the information about the game. In this video, we're going to talk about different types of methods that are not just get and set methods. One example when this might be helpful is in this main method. We're creating a new soccer game, and then we're displaying who won and by how many points. So we do in the main method the calculation game.getWinningscore minus game.getLosingScore. That works, but it's not ideal. We might have 5 different games, which means we have to do the calculation all 5 times in the main method. We might have a different example where this calculation is very complicated and not just simple arithmetic. Instead, what we'd really like is to call something like game.getWinningMargin, and that will just return the margin. It will return 1 in this case, or if the score is 5-2, it'll return 3. So that would be a great solution. How do we do that in our soccer game class? Well, one way is to add a variable, a field at the top called winning margin, and we set it to 1. Our soccer game constructor might just take the winning score minus the losing score and set winning margin equal to that. And then we'll add a get winning margin method to the bottom. You'll notice we're not adding a set winning margin method. That's because if a score is 5-3 and we set the winning margin to 3, does that mean the winning team scored 1 more goal or the losing team scored 1 fewer goal? It's not clear. So we'll leave out a set method. We're allowed to have get methods but not have set methods. But there's still a problem here. Let's say we set the winning score to 2. That calls the set winning score method. That changes winning score to 2. Everything's great, except that our winning margin is wrong now. It's still 1. So if we add a field like this, we have to remember every time something could impact the winning margin field, we have to recalculate it. And that leads to bugs. That leads to us writing this code for set winning score, but forgetting to write it for set losing score. Or creating a new method that impacts the winning margin, but forgetting to redo the calculation. So it's not ideal to have winning margin as a separate field, and most of the time we'll work really hard to avoid that. So what should we do instead? Instead, we'll add a method called calculate winning margin. That method's not a get or set method, but it's going to use information that's part of the soccer game. It's going to use the winning score and the losing score to calculate the margin, and it's going to return that value. So our main method still gets what we want. We still call a method called calculate winning margin, and it just gives us the answer. So let's see how we write this in Eclipse. Typically, we would keep the constructor right underneath the fields. I'm going to write the method up here anyways, just to make it easier for you to see the fields as we write the method. So we're going to call this public, and we're going to return an int. If we are calculating the winning margin in a soccer game, that's going to be an int. And I'll call this calculate winning margin. We don't need any extra information to calculate the margin. We need the winning score and we need the losing score, but we've already got those. Those are a part of our class. We don't need any extra information to calculate the winning margin. So I'm going to just say here, return winning score minus losing score. And that's it. We've got a method now calculating the winning margin. Let's do another example. Let's say we want to display the same information about 5 different soccer games in the main method. Why repeat the same basic printf 5 different times, having to change the variable every single time? Let's create a method that's part of our soccer game class. So this will be public. We don't need to return anything. We're just going to display the information on the screen. So it'll be void. And let's say display game info. Great, that's all we needed to do. We're displaying the information on the screen, and if we've got 5 different games, we can just say game1.displayGameInfo, game2.displayGameInfo, which is going to be a lot simpler than if we have to write this for each game in the main method. And one last example. Let's create a method that we can call when one of the 2 teams scores. we're going to call it team scores, and we're not going to figure out whether they're the winning team or the losing team when we call it. We are just going to pass the name of the team. So we can say, well, if the winning team equals team, then we're going to add 1 to the winning score. Winning score equals winning score plus 1. Otherwise, if it's the losing team, then the losing team's score should be increased. And we could have put that in the else, but I'm going to have an extra else in here to just display an error message in case we misspell the team. So that if we say France scores in a game between Germany and Argentina, we'll get an error message rather than just adding to one of the scores. Now this works pretty well. We still have one problem, which is that the losing team might not be losing anymore. Maybe they've tied up the game. We can just keep the winning team and the losing team the same. But if the losing team has won, we need to flip the teams now. And so we need to add a little bit of an if statement here. If losing score is greater than the winning score, and then if that's the case, we need to swap the teams. We need to swap the losing team and the winning team, and the losing score and the winning score. I'll add the code on the file posted on Canvas. The important thing is not the exact code here, but to be thinking as you're writing your program, what might my method be impacting? Are there other fields that this method might change? So let's look at a main method using our new soccer game class. I've created 2 soccer games, the 2010 World Cup Finals and the 2014 World Cup Finals. And I've written a printf here. In the year, the winning team won by the winning margin points. Again, you can see we're just calling the calculate winning margin. We don't need to give it any extra information. It already knows the winning score and the losing score, so it can do all the calculations it needs to. But you can picture if I want to display this now for the 2014, I've copied and pasted this line of code, but I've got to change a bunch of 2010s to 2014, and it's really easy to miss one. 2010 over here is in kind of a separate spot. I might have missed that. Or if I'm doing this 5 different times to just get the years so they don't match up. So this works, I can change it, but it's so much better instead to say WC Final 2010 .display game info. And this is going to display slightly different information about our game, but it's a much simpler call. I can copy and paste that, and I just have to change the variable that's calling the display game info method and nothing else. Let's see it in action. I'll click run, and I've actually got a bit of a bug here. I always forget that new line character. This is in the display game info method, so I'm going to just jump over there and add the new line character, run the program again, and I've solved it. Spain beat Netherlands by a score of 1-0. Germany beat Argentina by a score of 1-0. If I want to change what's displayed for all of the games, I just change the display game info method here,